Wait. Where'd it go?
And this, Michelle, also this one. Good morning. Ahmed Zuhair, State Minister, Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation from Maldives. Daya Nasir, Deputy Minister, Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation, also from the Maldives. Elder Baba, Senator, Senator of Pakistan. Syed Ali Zafar, Senator, Senate of Pakistan. Syed Muhammad Ali Shah Jamot, Senator from the Senate of Pakistan, warm welcome. Jamie Leather, Sarosh Khan, and Patrick Osewe from Asian Development Bank, also warm welcome. Of course, warm welcome to all of you both here in Manila and also for those that are joining online to this, the Global Regional Road Safety Observatory's dialogue on powered two-wheeler safety. Really delighted to have you all here in person and those online as well for this exciting two-day event. My name is Blaise Murfitt, Global Road Safety Partnership, and also supporting the Asia Road Safety Observatory. And I'm really delighted and excited to be with you here, helping to moderate this 2 days and hopefully to keep everyone engaged and enlivened as we think and we debate and we talk about our two-wheeler safety. When I was traveling here from Melbourne, Australia, I was on my way to the airport in Melbourne, and on the bus, a motorcyclist rode past me. The motorcyclist was wearing full protective gear, was riding on a very safe, separated road, and was clearly going for a nice weekend tour, a journey out of the city, and enjoying the freedom on that motorcycle. And I think that often, particularly in high-income countries, when we think of motorcycles or powered two-wheelers, this picture in the mind. But what we know is that the reality in low and middle-income countries is very different. Motorcycles or powered two-wheelers are in fact a family vehicle. They are a vehicle to take people to work. They're a vehicle to take people to the shops, schools, with friends, to see family. And as such, we think about the same question that is often thought about when we talk about road safety, which is, why should the cost of any of those simple, everyday tasks, why should the cost ever be death or serious injury? And that really is one of the key questions and issues we're here to address and talk about over these 2 days, is to think about powered two-wheeler safety, not just about it being a leisurely activity, but as a central part of our daily lives. How we can ensure that central part of daily lives of so many remain safe and sustainable for those users. So I'm sure you've seen that we have really just an outstanding group of organisations who have joined together to put on this event and support this event, including the Asian Development Bank, Asia Pacific Road Safety Observatory. Sorry, that screen's just moved from me there. Also the FIA Foundation, the Global Network for Road Safety Legislators, World Bank Global Road Safety Facility, Global Road Safety Partnership, the National Road Assessment Program, the Malaysian Institute of Road Safety Research, Inter-American Road Safety Observatory, OSCEVI, the Global Regional Road Safety Observatories, Towards Zero Foundation, United Nations ESCAP, and the World Health Organization. And I feel quite confident to say that two-wheeler safety and motorcycles is not perhaps always the highest priority issue, but this really is, I think, an unprecedented collection of global organizations that have come together to really think about how we can take strong and evidence-based action. It's also important to acknowledge UK Aid as a key supporter of this activity. So over the next 2 days, we really will be here to challenge, provoke, explore, expand, and critically move to action. And this will be the focus of these 2 days on powered two-wheeler safety. And then, of course, for those of you who will join us, we'll move to the Asia Pacific Road Safety Observatory annual meeting. So I hope you can see there some of the key housekeeping elements. So please, just a reminder to keep your mobile phones in silent mode. If you do need to take a call, please just move outside to our foyer area. While you're here, please don't take off your face mask or you're presenting. Remember to, of course, follow social distancing. During questions and answers, if you are here with us in Manila, please just raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you and ask you to move to one of the microphones. If you're joining us via Zoom, please just also use the use the chat function to put in a question, and these will be passed over to me. And you can also see the different reminders there for Zoom participation, including that the chat icon is there for any questions and comments. These will be managed by a moderator, and we really do strongly encourage questions and comments from our online friends. We will be getting to you right throughout this event, but of course from those of you here today as well. And I hope for all participants you can see there the other reminders for online participation. Just move back to the other housekeeping for in-person if possible. A reminder as well that we do have Russian translation available both here in person, so the tables in blue at the back, and also for our online participants as well. Please just select the translation icon and select Russian. And I should also at this point mention that for those of you who are here in person, I hope you will all have been given a colour sticker on your lanyard. If you haven't, please let one of the organisers know. But this corresponds to your ability to go and witness the very special Stop the Crash demonstration, which will be happening in 3 different time slots during today. You'll be taken out there by some of the transport sector team and see the important demonstration, which is put on by partners from Towards Zero Foundation, the Global New Car Assessment Program, the Stop the Crash Partnership, IROS, and as in NCAP. We'll also hear more about these technologies during the session 2 of today. So for those joining online, you will not miss out. These partners are advocating for this life-saving technology of motorcycle ABS to be fitted on all motorcycles that are capable of travel speed of 50 kilometres or greater. And we know that safer vehicles are really a key element of the safe system approach. So for those of you here in Manila, this is a great opportunity to see this technology in real life. You can see there's 3 groups. You have an orange sticker, and you will be joining at the 10:30 a.m. group, and you'll be led there by the team leaders, Mark and Pinky. You have a pink sticker, you will be going in the 1 o'clock session, and you'll be led by Diane and EJ. And if you have a green sticker, then you will be going at 3:10, and you will be led by Connie and Urson. So just a reminder there about that, and we really think that will be a great opportunity for you to see that life-saving technology. So with that, I just, again, will implore you all joining online and in person to really use this time to challenge ideas and thoughts, also to be greedy about getting information and making connections. What we need to do is, of course, work together to address this important issue and to help join us to form real action on powered to real estate. So with that, I'm going to invite our first speaker for this event, and this is Patrick Osewe, who is the Chief of the Health Sector Group at the Asian Development Bank. Provides leadership on policy, technical and operational matters, close collaboration with the sector committee. He leads the application of evidence-based and innovative approaches to address priority emerging health issues in Asia and the Pacific. You can see perhaps a little more of his bio there, but just for time, I'm going to leave it with that and warmly welcome to the stage to Patrick Osewe. Patrick.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And I would like to welcome all the distinguished participants who are here, who have traveled from far and wide to be here today for this very, very important dialogue. To me, as the Chief of the Health Sector Group at ADB, this is really a great opportunity to talk about a major challenge that we are facing here in Asia and the Pacific. It's a global problem. Our focus is Asia and the Pacific. And the way that the various partners have convened this event to have a dialogue, a regional dialogue and a global dialogue on one of the biggest issues that is facing facing the world. During the pandemic, there was lockdown and restrictions. And when we look at the number of road traffic accidents, be it vehicles or two-wheelers, the numbers went down. Now that the pandemic is waning, the economies are opening, we need to see the numbers going up again. This is a serious challenge that you're facing. You're recovering from a pandemic. The economy is growing, and then again, we have another challenge, having power two-wheeler accidents. And what that does, if I look at it from the health perspective, we have mortality. Then for those who are disabled, it's quite severe. Us as ADB, we are a development bank, and we focus on poverty reduction and improving the well-being of the individual, the community, the country. Look at what happens with a road crash, that we have mortality, we have disability. And when you have disability, someone was a breadwinner, I mean, that family is completely the breadwinner is not there. If because of disability, there's also the family asset that have for generations have to be sold to take care of the person who is disabled 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. It's a serious challenge that when you look at what is reported in terms of road traffic, we only talk about mortality, but actually nobody knows mortality. What impact does it really have on society? What is the impact on family? Serious, serious challenges. And so our region here has the highest mortality and the highest disability, because of course we have the highest population in the world. And so this is a top priority for us. In 2018, we developed, we prepared for strategy 2030. Strategy that looks at how we the various collaborate on major development challenges. We need to focus on transport issues and focus on health issues, and we work our offices connect to each other. come along? Bring in health expertise to help the transport sector. And how do you bring in issues on transport, the health sector? Very much integrated and across other sectors as well. A fairly collaborative approach, looking at a problem from a multi-sectoral perspective, trying to solve those problems. And so as you look at this issue, it's an issue that's affecting the health sector tremendously. It's affecting all sectors tremendously. And so the UN discussed the SDGs, approved. Are we making progress on on SDGs? It's an opportunity to have those conversations. What is it that you're not doing? And if you're not achieving this, it is change our game. We're playing a game and we're not going to achieve our target. Just need to change our game. We can't just do business as usual. And what is that? What exactly should we be doing? Different from what we've been doing to be able to change our game and accelerate progress towards achieving SDGs. And so as we sit, as we meet here for the next 2 days, it's a great opportunity to look at what innovations are being tried out there. Can we bring those innovations to scale? What other innovations should we be focusing on? We are a very unique development bank in that we can invest in something which fails and it's still a success. In many situations, we're afraid to take risks. At ADB, we are encouraged away from our president. Take risks and document those risks and document those failures. Because if you fail, then you try again. You fail, you try again, and you succeed. But if you do not want to, if you don't want to fail, you don't try. So let's work together, try new innovations, scale up the innovations that are already there, and let's really have an impact on this major challenge that we're facing in our region. And with a collective mind, collective effort, collective experience, well, that this is a challenge to overcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, for those opening remarks on behalf of the Asian Development Bank. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Nikorn Chamnong, who is the chair of the Asia Pacific Regional Network for Road Safety Legislators. Nikorn is also a member of Thailand's House of Representatives, vice chairperson of the Standing Committee on Transport, and of the People's Safety Foundation. Nikorn, welcome for your opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. I myself, I'm a parliamentarian now, but I work for road safety now about 20 years ago. And today I'm happy, very, very happy that I heard that ADB come back to work on road safety. Tell you on the year 204. That time I'm work for Mr. that take care of land transport. We have the conference in Jakarta. That time I complained about something about the World Bank and ADB about to give the money for poor country. I said on the conference that, do you know that you that murder the people in poor country? That's only fun, only get to make road without initiate about road safety because of new road to regular people in those countries. And that time, EDB, that stands for Secretary. Mr. Ross, I mentioned Dr. Ross, just stand for that. And then after that, we do something very important is we plan, we set up the master plan of ASEAN countries for road safety. It took about 2 years at that time. And then we finished. And we have declaration on Phnom Penh Declaration. We have the master plan on road safety of ASEAN country is talk about 5 year plan and finish on the 205 until 210. We work, but by now I never heard it again because of uh, we talking about this in UK at the time that the World Bank set up when the country that loan the money from World Bank to make road. We need to have 3-star road to give the just like that. If you need some money from World Bank, you need to have the initiate about 3-star road too. Is regulation on that. And then um, today, I heard that ADB come back to make it again. I'm very, very happy because of around here in Asia Pacific, we have the same problem about people, about country. People, our people, you can see, in my country, 80% is motorcycle, I mean, vehicle. Around here too, in Vietnam too. So we have the problem not like in UK or in Europe. We have special problem about motorcycles. So today when we talk about the danger of to use motorcycle, I think it's a good fight. And after that, I I myself of 20 years, I plan to set up to be leadership council of Global Network for Road Safety. We start on the year 2016. The Towards Zero Foundation introduced me to go to UK, London. And at that time, we got about 16 parliamentarians from 16 there. And we set up the Global Network for Road Safety. And after that, the next year, we have the uh, uh, manifesto of Global Network for Road Safety to, to, to help the people all around the world. And uh, one of our leader went to UN meeting. Just we saw that the plan of action up to the year 2020 is not work. We start to recall extend to the year 2030, but we need to have change about how to do that. And this is plan now, global action on the road safety plan. And I'm happy to go to the third um, ministerial conference in Stockholm. I found something very impressed me. On conference, we have the young people stand up. They wear the yellow and green and very, very beautiful. Here, yeah. The young people, US international, they stand up in the conference and they said, our people, young people die a lot. We need to take care of it ourselves. So right now, I try to find the young people from my country, I mean, to work on that. No. So right now I set up in my country and I contact uh, both of them to join the young people in my country. I very hope for that to make the young people join together. And actually the motorcyclists, they are young and they drive fast, very dangerous. So I think we come in the right way on motorcycle problem. Right? And lastly, I will talk on the behalf of executive branch because I work on the minister that take care of land transport for 3 years. I have something in progress, just like in Thailand, you can see motorcycle taxi because of me. And then about the budget, we have a problem, a lot about budget to work on road safety. I passed a law to make the license plate to just like to make money from that. And right now we got about 800 million US dollar now on that to be to have the finance for road safety, not not the budget from the government. And another thing is, I will tell you on the behalf of legislator. I work for to be parliamentarian a long time, and right now we passed a law a lot on that. And last time we just passed uh, follow the Evelyn request, the child resident. We just filed on last we passed, and then it active last month in Thailand. Child resident is the first time, and the big law waiting for us is traffic court. I just started about 20 years on the day 204 until now, 20 years for one law, traffic court. We don't have it in Thailand. And another thing is I moved the ASO automatic headlight on in Thailand. And I think it's very helpful because of I study in Japan that to open the light on in the daytime will save a lot of life, and it just reduce accident a lot on the road. And follow, I studied in Malaysia. They have running headlight on. And the last thing that I want to say is, I said to uh, the Minister of Road Safety in UK, just joking, in common parliament, I said that UK, I mean, you have to respond for my country because the first car from UK that killed our people. Another thing is, in my country, we use I mean, democracy. And this thing is very hard to control people. We can see that in some country that, just like I don't name that, it's easy to control people. But in the country that you use democracy, it's very hard to do that because people just not obey. And I really love a lot about the minister, safety minister told me that, well, you have to talk with your people a lot, make them understand, make them follow the safety themselves. I love that. So today I'm very happy to be here with you and start to do again. All my life, I think I will work for this until the people die on the road is not occur again. That never again mean that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikon, for those wonderful opening remarks and also sharing your experience dealing with many of the challenges that we will discuss over the next 2 days in Thailand. Thank you also for making my job quite easy to now move to our next speakers, who are bringing that youth voice to this important event and this important debate, and to talk a little bit about the impact of powered two-wheeler safety on youth. So presenting together next will be first Marilyn Makatangai, who is with the Laws of the Youth Coalition for Road Safety. Marilyn has worked as a social media manager and copywriter since 2015. Has also from 2016 worked in the Land Transportation Office under the Office of the Regional Director, where she handled all communication. She started working with Yours in 2019. She's worked as a Global Youth Task Force member and helped organise the Second World Youth Assembly for Road Safety. She also oversees all communications for Yours and the Youth Coalition. And joining her is Ray Adrian Makalalag, who has been a road safety advocate since he began his career as a civil engineer and civil servant. In his current work at the National Economic and Development Authority, he has led the initiatives to institutionalize data collection and coordination between national government offices and the local government units for evidence-based decision-making for road safety. Aside from being a member of the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety, he is also the Young Professional Lead for East Asia and the Pacific of the International Road Federation, where he assists in IRF's projects. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mao and Ray.
First of all, we do have a presentation, so you need to see it. It's really simple. It's easy. It's really easy to follow. So could you please, there we go. There we go. It's a really cool motorcycle on behalf of the event. And I'm really honored to be here with my colleague with this esteemed panel. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to start with some global data. If we go to the first slide, we see the next slide. There we go. We see that the latest global road safety data shows that 1.35 million people die every year on the world's roads. And I'm sure this is something familiar with us. Something that isn't quite known is that if you move to the next slide, okay, there we go. 1/3 of the 1.35 million are made out of young people, like me, aged 15 to 29 years old. If you move to the next slide again, you'll see that in number, around 360,000 young people die every year on the world's roads. Let that sink in. 360,000 young people. Put that in perspective. 15 to 29. These are people who do not have ideas of what their dreams could be, what their potential is, or just beginning to understand their purpose in life. These are people like me. These will be people gone too soon. These will be people who have families and friends. So that's some of the things behind the data. If we look at the next slide, we go further into the global data, and we see that per death rate, Africa and Asia have the highest number of youth deaths because of road crashes. It's very interesting, and I think we're going to share the slides. And we see, because we're in Asia, we highlighted it in blue. We see that per 100,000, 20.7% are dead because of road crashes. That comes to around 20,000. The severity of that number is mind-blowing. And as a young person in Asia, that is twice as alarming. Now, if you move to the next slide again, this is all data. You see that males are more at risk of dying from road crashes. Is this our fault? No. We do have non-modifiable risks affecting this data. Males have testosterone, and young people's brains are less developed. And we also have the inexperience that comes with age. Youth is the time where we make mistakes. And just touching a little bit on what my colleague will discuss, it is important that we design a global system that protects us, right? So despite this data, even though males are more at risk of dying on the world's roads, women of the same age are more likely to die on a per crash basis. Why is this? It's for the very simple reason that cars and roads and other road infrastructure are designed for males. An example of this, you just need to look at crash test dummies. Have you ever seen a female crash test dummy? Is what I ask. No. That is why females are more likely to die on a per crash basis. That's all we have for the data so far. And then, now that we have a global picture of what this is, I'm going to talk about how it affects young people. You know, we're the most affected when it comes to road crashes, and we're the victims. We're often seen as the victims. So I just want you to know that we're not taking this lying down. We're taking this seriously. And we at yours are supporting young people in order to protect ourselves from road crashes. Now, if you move to the next slide, you will see some of the things that yours is doing to empower young people? No. So yours is guided by our mission to empower young people to demand and deliver road safety and sustainable mobility. How do we do this? I'm very proud to say that I'm part of an organization that not just talks the talk, but also walks the walk. So the first thing we do is we give young people access to resources. What are these resources? We provide them access to funds, to partnerships, to opportunities, to stakeholders, everything you can imagine. We provide young people with the opportunities and resources that they need in order to create the biggest impact for their road safety project. If we move to the next slide, which is just it's changing color, we also provide capacity development opportunities. Now, how is it different from resources? In capacity building, we provide young people with what we call soft skills and hard skills that would better improve the impact that they will make for road safety. One of the more tangible examples that we have is the Yours Academy. It's a free online learning platform that teaches young people about the basics and the complications of road safety. And then currently we have two modules up, the global road safety problem and youth and the safe systems approach. And I can go around later and tell you about yours academy because it's a whole other thing. And then the next one, if you move to the next slide, is opportunities to advocate. Now for that one, you don't really have to go too far. I'm a young person and I'm advocating for road safety right in front of you. So that's really cool and interesting. But again, I'd like to reference our good friend Nikorn for involving young people because I know that moment he's talking about during the assembly because I was there and we were in our hoodies and we stood up and we were acknowledged. And a very huge thank you to ADP as well for choosing young people to join this very important event. And finally, if you go to the next slide, we provide young people, no, there we go. We provide young people with a platform to unite and, become a coalition. This is the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety. And this is really cool because from the ministerial conference, we created the Global Youth Coalition because we saw that there was a need for like-minded young people interested in road safety gather. And to talk about road safety in the Global Youth Coalition, I have my partner. I'm going to take over your role, Blaze, for a bit and call on Ray.
Thank you, Mao. And again, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. It's really overwhelming for us youth to be in this event, and I'm very sure that if not, we are really the youngest here. Am I right? All right. So I guess we have to move to the next slide. Okay, so I'm just gonna read this. The Global Youth Coalition is actually a direct follow-up after the Second World Youth Assembly in 2020. So that was in Sweden. And then this makes it a little more than 2 years old. And as a youth coalition, we are guided by 5 people. So it's now flashed on screen. All right. So first of all, we are youth driven. And in fact, you would never see an organization like the Global Youth Coalition wherein youth are the teachers, the youth are the organizers, and the youth are also the ones who take action. So it's a very nice venue for us youth to have this inject our passion for road safety and to make a road safe in general. Next is that we also have equality and diversity in the organization. So equality and diversity because we do not discriminate and we do not just pick a certain group. We pick all walks of life and also of gender. And next is the youth statement, and this is actually the bulk of our organization's mantra. So the Youth Coalition is guided by the Global Youth Statement on Road Safety. It is a document that lists down and resonates with the youth cry of enough is enough. This statement highlights the reality that youth face as a generation born into a global road safety crisis with added challenges around being meaningfully engaged. And building on this, one of the hallmarks of our principles is meaningful youth engagement. So that's the next one. We are fighting the tokenism of youth and want to highlight their power, creativity, abilities, and more. We are working for and with young people as partners. So again, that's why we're here, and we want to really take place in this agenda. And finally, we have safe and sustainable mobility, wherein the Youth Coalition believes that addressing transportation and mobility issues will help achieve other targets under Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. Road safety is an accelerator of multiple SDGs, by the way, and needs to be considered on the agenda of leaders and policymakers. That's why we're here. Next slide, please. All right, so some of our tangible initiatives include our local action, and the local actions are short and medium term grassroots action plans oriented to address the most pressing road safety issues facing the youth. Okay? Within the local actions, we have our youth leading projects in their communities, and we provide support in the form of funding, capacity building, access to partners, mentorship, and more. In fact, in 2021, we funded and supported 12 projects, and this year we have 17. And of course, at an increasing rate, we expect it to be more in the coming years. Local actions projects are centered around efforts to advocate for road safety and meaningful youth participation, mobilize communities for road safety, and engage other youth to get involved. In our current in our current round of local actions, we have the two youth-led projects on powered two-wheeled vehicles in Indonesia. So if we move to the next slide, please. So that one is Vanya Emanuela from Indonesia, and uh, she's from Indonesia, and her project is called Strapped Helmet Community. And her project highlights the realities in Bandung, Indonesia. I don't know if I pronounce it right, where the main mode of transport are motorcycles. In Bandung, motorcyclists suffer the most cases of injuries and deaths. Road safety data reveals that of the total number of road-related injuries, 74% are made up by motorcycle drivers. In terms of road-related deaths, motorcycle drivers make up 69%. So that's a very, very big number. Tanya and her team took note and of this with the data, identified that the main cause of death of the following crashes are head injuries. Of course, when we hit our heads, that would be concussions and other types of head injuries that would maybe deliver long-term effects on our well-being and even our death. And her project aims to reduce the number of these deaths caused by head injuries in Bandung by two methods. The first one is establishing a community group that uses strap helmets, and the other one is creating a driver's community that is well trained and educated in road safety. So here are more pictures of her project on the next slide. Right? So yes, as you can see now, people are wearing helmets there, and we hope that that would be sustained. And on the next slide, another local action project on two-wheeled powered vehicles is also based in Indonesia. But this time it's by Nikita Adriana, and her project is Bike to School. Raises awareness of the increasing number of underage motorcycle drivers at the junior high level. Drivers are often not old enough to legally have a driver's license. And to address this, Nikita and her team organized some road safety themed activities that use art. So that's a very creative way of things, and other creative mediums to raise awareness and of the dangers of underage driving. Nikita wants students to get better understanding of the issue as well as earn a willingness to obey traffic rules. Because of course, in road safety, if every if the entire surroundings that we have could not be controlled, we ourselves could control our actions. Okay? And here are some pictures of her. Yes, right. So those are the young people there that we are trying to save. Yes, and there's more of the informal discussions that are being done. And there's also this video that we had, but this is just a screenshot, by the way, of the video wherein we promote awareness of how dangerous it is to wear nothing or to not actually be ready in terms of traveling, right? So I guess I will now be turning over back to my colleague here, Mao, to add more on this. Thank you.
So this is just going to be a very quick wrap up. So if you move to the next slide. Oh, by the way, so these are projects by our youth leaders, as Ray mentioned, and you see now the impact of the importance of power-to-wheel vehicles. They created projects to address these issues because they're so predominant in their communities and countries. And we have these advocacy tools that will guide our young people. First, we have our policymakers toolkit that will guide policymakers and decision makers on how to meaningfully introduce youth. SDG 4 policy brief that connects SDG 4 quality education with road safety, and SDG 5 policy brief which connects gender equality with road safety. We will distribute some of those later. And then for the next slide, we have next slide we have how do we support meaningful youth participation? And in a nutshell, these three need to come together. Mindset needs to be there. There needs to be the way of working. There needs to be commitment. In terms of all of these, there needs to be a paradigm shift when you engage with youth. These are not the problem, they're part of the solution. And you need to inculcate the and put in the meaningful youth participation within the system. It needs to be there and you need to commit to it. And that's the only way we're going to institutionalize and mainstream meaningful youth participation. And last one are our recommendations. There we go. We need long-term investment for young people. We need to institutionalize meaningful youth participation, and we need to offer support. Thank you very much, and we hope for these three things from you guys. We'll be looking, we'll be watching.
Thank you so much. I have to move that. Thank you so much, Ray and Mao. And two things I wanted to mention just to further what they were talking about. The first is that in tomorrow's final dialogue session, we will be having a specific dialogue topic focusing on the integration of youth voices and decision making into the actions that we all believe are important to address powered two-wheeler safety. But also, I echo again on that word incorporate, because I think that the examples that Ray and Mao gave there are so important because they're not just looking at youth as something separate or a separate issue just to put out to the side, but instead saying that we need to incorporate youth voice and focus within all of the aspects that we're doing across the system to address powered two-wheeler safety. Mao gave very clear sign about just how much impact there is for youth when it comes to motorcycle and powered two-wheeler fatalities, serious injuries. So just so incredibly important that consideration of incorporation of that voice, and we're thrilled that they're here today. And although I might be a little younger than both of you, but otherwise really happy to have you here. Okay, so then let me please move to the next of our speakers, who is Mr. Dave Shelton, who is the Senior Transport Specialist for road safety here at the Asian Development Bank, and also the focal for the Asia Pacific Road Safety Observatory. The ADB, he supports the Operations Department apply safe system thinking, the best possible reductions in death and injury from road use, and also enhancing road safety capacity both within the Asian Development Bank, but also building the capacity of developing member countries' road safety management at the same time. Davis served as a senior executive in government in Australia, chaired National Road Safety Executive Group, and a board member for the Australian New Car Assessment Program, Austroads Program Manager for Road Safety, Freight and Registration and Licensing, and he is also a co-founder of Wozniak PL and the principal consultant for Safe Systems Solutions PL before joining the Asian Development Bank. Dave, like myself, is Australian, and he holds a bachelor's degree in engineering, master's in environmental studies, and is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Dave, warm welcome.
Thanks very much, Blaise. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see so many faces, so many people that, of course, I've met online, and it's a real delight to see you here in person. So I'm going to address the role of the Regional Road Safety Observatory. And in some respects, this is a very simple role, and in others, it's actually quite a sophisticated role. In simple form, we are somewhat of a reverse application of the idea that you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And the idea of the observatories is that by measuring things, we start to influence their management. In that respect, we are here to witness. We're here to witness the deaths and injuries on roads across our member countries. You can see on this slide here that the observatory is still a pretty young endeavour overall all around the world, particularly in low and middle income countries, across Asia Pacific, across Africa, across Latin America. Still a long way to go. In fact, if you were to count the number of fatalities that are covered by countries who are members of observatories at the regional level, you would not accrue a total of more than 50% of total global fatalities. So we're not yet covering even half the problem. In witnessing, we're often called to answer some questions. I was asked to report to the Office of a Senior Staff Member here at the Asian Development Bank just yesterday. There were two questions. Those very good questions. The first one was, this is the second decade of action. What happened? Tell me about the first one. What happened then? Well, the first one, I said, the first one, there were some frictious discussions between stakeholders, and there was a steady rise in fatalities and serious injuries. Second question was, road trauma is costing individual countries something between 3 and 6%. 6%? Can that be right? That's a very high number. It's discomforting. It's a very uncomfortable number to reflect on, 6% from an economic perspective. It's even more uncomfortable when we think about the actual loss of life and the families that are affected by death and injury on our roads. 6%, and I said that that's a very discomforting number. It's very high, and by the way, it's also a rubbery figure. It's a rubbery figure. It's a modelled figure. It's an estimated figure, and it becomes even more discomforting when we realise that it's actually an uncertain figure because we don't know. The reality is we don't know. We actually don't know how many deaths and how many injuries there are from traffic crashes around the world. We don't know. And that's very uncomfortable thing that this is what we're here to manage and we actually don't know how many there are. Well, we do know that in many low-income countries, we can be counting as few as sort of 15% of the total. And lower, it's embarrassingly low. It's embarrassing as professionals who take pride in our work that we could be missing our accounting by so much. And it's morally awkward that we cannot account lives. The other task of the observatories is to observe future risks to death and injury on our roads. We have a 2030 target of a 50% reduction in death and injury over that period. There is great risk to reaching that number. The evidence from the last decade would suggest that very unlikely to reach that number. And when we dig underneath and ask some of the key drivers as to why, we find things like the reason that we're meeting today and tomorrow. So our work here is actually premised on three main points here. First is that for many countries for whom motorcycling is a large part of their traffic mix, and of course then death and injury is similarly high, for those countries, if they cannot make motorcycling safe, they have very little chance of being a 50% reduction in death and injury by 2030. Very little chance at all. In fact, there are also some countries, many countries indeed, for whom motorcycling trauma is such a large part of their challenge that if they were to focus solely on motorcycle safety and be successful, they could get a 50% reduction just in saving motorcycle death and injury. Second premise is that as we look across the world, and I'm including high-income countries in this statement, it's very difficult to find an action plan out to 2030 that gives you confidence that motorcycle death and injury is going to be halved. Very, very difficult to find. There's some encouraging commitments and statements, but mostly we find where there are action plans, they're not very evidence-based, and sadly, too often they're not even adequately resourced. The third premise is even more complex and troubling. The third premise is actually that the evidence is that, especially for low and middle income countries, particularly low income countries, the evidence is that we do not know how to manage road trauma. We don't know how to bring the numbers down. We don't know how to stabilise them, let alone bring them down. So there are sort of two big challenges for us in motorcycle safety. One of them is to know what to do. Now, we know a lot about that. You could say we've solved that problem, although indeed there are plenty of circumstances in which propelling human bodies unprotected at great speed, we cannot protect them. The second, of course, is that even where we do know what to do, we are unable, it seems, to do it. These are complex human challenges. And so as observatories, this is one of our roles, to observe what's actually happening, what are the facts, to report those as uncomfortable as they might be. And then secondly, to seek to create some momentum towards the changes that are needed to do something about it. And so these couple of days are really about creating some momentum to catalyse some reflection, and ideally people will return home with some renewed impulse around what might happen in your countries to get some attention to and try to move the effort that's actually needed to be mobilised for motorcycle power two-wheeler safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave, and thanks again to the Global Regional Road Safety Observatories for their work in putting on this event. So it's such an important one, and I think as well, another key aspect of the role that observatories can play is that element of bringing us together to debate and discuss the issues at hand. Finally, in this opening session, we do have one more speaker, who is Mr. Nan Tran, who is the Head of Safety and Mobility for the Department for the Social Determinants of Health at the World Health Organization. Nan was born in Vietnam and grew up in the US, where he completed studies in international relations and modern languages. And he obtained a graduate degree in international public health and a doctorate in health systems research with an emphasis on road traffic injuries from Johns Hopkins. Nan also worked at the regional and federal levels of the United States Department of Health and Human Services in various capacities, managing programs and as a science advisor. And later as a researcher at Johns Hopkins, Nan was engaged in health systems and road safety research, and also co-founded the International Injury Research Unit. Before Nan joined WHO in 2011, he was previously the manager of the WHO Alliance for Health Policy and Systems Research, where he led the development of guidance and initiatives to strengthen health systems through the implementation of proven effective interventions. And since October 2017, Nan has been the head of safety and mobility, as I mentioned, and coordinates work in the areas of unintentional injury prevention, focused mainly on road safety, injury surveillance and surveys, and alcohol and drug-related injuries. And Nan is here to talk to us a little more about the current global picture and context of powered two-wheeler safety. And of course, he's warmly welcome, Nan.
Thanks very much, Blaze. I'll have to lower this. We are a bit different in height. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, a very good morning to you. And I'd like to especially thank the Asian Development Bank colleagues for organizing this really important dialogue, which I think has been a long time in the making. It's really great to actually have a dedicated space to talk specifically about the problem of powered two-wheelers, because it really is a significant problem. And as you've heard already from colleagues here, a problem that if we are not able to overcome, we will not effectively reach the targets of the global plan and the global decade to reduce deaths and injuries by 50%. What I'd like to do this morning is just to provide some reflections based on a bit of what we've heard already from the colleagues here, and to challenge and perhaps provoke you a bit in terms of how we proceed the next couple of days, and to perhaps think about how we might debate this issue with a slightly different lens. Next slide, please. So I won't belabor the point about data. You all know this, and this comes from the 2018 Global Status Report, which shows the distribution of motorcycle deaths across the regions. And you know already that in this region, this part of the world, is one of the regions where we have the highest proportions of powered two-wheeler deaths around the world. And so it's a significant problem for us. Next slide. What you also know is that the trends, if we look at the data globally in terms of the proportion of motorized vehicles being motorcyclists, we see also that this is a growing trend. This comes from 2019 data, which has yet to be published, which you will soon see in the 2023 Global Status Report, which will come out next year. But we basically have looked at the distribution of motorcycles and powered two-wheelers across the world, and you can see that, of course, in Southeast Asia, in the Americas, in Africa, and in other parts of the world, you're seeing that motorcycles and other powered two-wheelers actually comprise a large proportion of the motorized traffic mix, which means that, as you've heard, if we don't address this problem, the goal of actually achieving the target of reducing death by half will not be attainable by the year 2030. Next slide. We're also seeing, in addition to the increase in the number of powered two-wheelers, we're also seeing an evolution in powered two and three-wheelers and how they're being used. As I think a colleague said earlier, we talked about, when we typically talked about powered two-wheelers, we often think, it was Blaze that said this morning, that we're thinking about people going on leisure rides, we're thinking about the Harley Davidson riders and so forth. But what we're seeing is that this is changing, and we see that change happening first and foremost in this region. So in some ways, Asia Pacific and the Western Pacific is in some ways a trendsetter, if you will, because this is where we're seeing the changes starting, and we're actually seeing powered two-wheelers becoming much more mainstream. We're seeing different types of users, and certainly during the pandemic, one of the things that we actually observed in Europe, where I'm based, is the increase in the use of delivery services, Uber Eats, Grab, and these types of things, which of course mostly rely on powered two-wheelers for the delivery services. The next slide. But we're also seeing something happening worldwide, and we're seeing this even in European countries. And I chose this picture specifically because when we think about powered two and three-wheelers and we talk about the family vehicle, we typically think about, the motorcycle with the family on it. We don't actually think about the electric bikes, which are also powered two and three wheelers, which also, again, fall into this category, which is also now becoming increasingly a family vehicle, not because of necessity, but it is now becoming more important for the purposes of environmental concerns that people are starting to go back to power and two-wheelers, and also because people want to be more flexible. So I put this picture in partly to challenge our thinking, firstly, about what it is we're talking about. Is it just purely motorcycles and scooters and people being unsafe, or is this actually a positive trend that we're actually seeing more and more power two-wheelers? So, I think we often think that, oh, there's an increasing trend. So what we want to do is actually to stop and lower the number of power two-wheelers around the world. But as we're seeing in Europe and in North America, that this is actually a trend that's born out of a concern for the environment. And so there is actually more desire for that. And we're seeing different possibilities and different ways of envisioning, for example, power two-wheeler use. So again, I ask that you take this into consideration as we think about the power two and three-wheeler situation and the quote-unquote problem that we're having. Is it that something that we want to get rid of altogether, or is it something that we want to embrace and that we want to address in a way that allows us to manage mobility in a more sustainable way? Next slide. So we've talked a lot about the reductions and the likelihood or not likelihood of whether or not we will achieve the goal that has been set by the 2020 resolution calling for a second global decade of action for road safety. And along with that, it set a target it renewed, I should say, the commitment to reduce deaths and injuries by 50% by the year 2030. And we've done some estimations in terms of looking at where the trends are and what actually needs to happen if we are to achieve that reduction in death by the year 2030. So you can see here, right now, globally, the death rate per 100,000 population is roughly at 16.9 or 17. Again, these are based on global estimations. I want to emphasize the word estimations because, as Dave has just said, we often don't know what the reality is. And so we rely on our best guess, or in this case, we actually use models to help us estimate what the reality is actually. But this is actually twice as what the numbers are reported by countries officially. So the WHO estimates are twice as high as what countries actually report, just to give you a sense of how uncertain we are when it comes to the fatality and injury data. But basically what we're showing here is that the yellow line is the curve that needs to actually happen. And in fact, in 3 years' time, we actually should be at 12.7 deaths per 100,000 population. And ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't take a rocket science to tell you that we're not on track. As Dave has already said, the curve as it stands now shows that we're not actually moving down that track. And so we actually need to actually take as Patrick has said this morning, change the game. If the game is not working, if we're not winning at the game, then we do need to change the game. And this, I think, does require, as some colleagues have suggested already, a fundamental paradigm shift. So what is that paradigm shift that we need to think about? Let me offer you a few suggestions that we've been thinking about. Next slide, please. So I think historically, we've often responded to the road safety problem with this idea of the safe systems. And obviously, safe systems has evolved from the science that has been over 50 years in the making. We started thinking about sort of the prevention, looking at road safety as a preventable outcome. We started understanding the risk factors. And then we started to put that together and and we put it together from a perspective of a system and said, we can actually prevent this. And this, of course, came largely from high-income countries. Sweden was one of the first countries that actually formulated this as an approach. However, I think that safe system approach has been, and I will be provocative here, inappropriately applied around the world. And I think that the safe systems approach has been posited or put forward as the answer to everything. And I think that while the elements of the safe system are extremely important, and I'm not here to say that the safe system is not the right approach. What I'm here to say is that in order to apply the safe system, we actually need to change fundamentally the root of the problem. And we actually have to start thinking about road safety, from a sort of a root cause analysis. And this is what I'd like to propose. If you just go to the next slide real quickly, or press the next button. Part of what we've been talking about, of course, is thinking about the trends and what we observe. And we know that underlying those trends, the events, there are patterns and trends. And we also know that underlying those patterns and trends are underlying structures. These are the transport system and the policies. But what are the transport and policies underpinned by? They're underpinned by our social cultural values. And I believe that part of the reason why we have not been able to make more progress in reducing the number of road traffic deaths and injuries globally is because fundamentally our social cultural values have not changed. And we still, despite the fact that we say that we're applying a safe systems approach, we still actually haven't changed our fundamental values to value safety. And I believe that is what we need to do. And that is actually the starting point for the discussions that we need to be having. Next slide, please. So I often, go back, please. Oh, yeah, sorry. I often put this image, sorry, go back, yeah, this one, just to illustrate how our values haven't changed. So I think that when most people look at this picture, the immediate reaction is, oops, this person is being unsafe. He's carrying an unsafe load. He's not wearing a helmet. Surely he's probably speeding. And I don't need for you to confirm that. But my guess is that very few of us are looking at this picture and thinking, wow, he's actually quite skilled. He's actually able to manage a huge load. He's doing this not because he is reckless or because he wants to take risks. He's doing this because it's a necessity. He's doing this because there is no other option for him. So I think how we describe the situation very much reflects how we look at the situation and the type of value that we bring into the situation. And despite the fact that Vision Zero and Safe System is all about acknowledging and accepting human error, I think there's still a tendency for all of us to really think about blaming the user, even though we are all in it together. And I think there is a sort of a gut reaction to say, let's apply the safe systems principle here. Let's make sure that this person is wearing a helmet. Let's make sure that the vehicle is safe. Let's make sure that there is a motorcycle lane. Let's make sure that he's not carrying the load. Our reaction is not to say, given his reality, given his need to do this for his livelihood, how can we design a system that is safe for him? That is what the safe system tells us. And I think we sometimes forget that because we sometimes very much rush to this formulaic approach where we say, we know what works, we just need to do it. And ladies and gentlemen, I think it was Dave that said it, so I'll requote him. I don't think we know what works. I don't think we know what works, and that's why we haven't been able to do it. It's not as easy as just to say, put a helmet on him, put anti-lock brakes on his bike, tell him to legislate this practice, because it's a reality, it's an economic reality. Next slide. I did my PhD studies in Malaysia at the University of Putra Malaysia for our colleagues from MIROS. And I worked under the late Prof. Radin, who was my supervisor at the time, who was the first DG of MIROS. And when I was in Malaysia, one of the big issues we were looking at was the use of a dedicated motorcycle lane. And this actually comes from a clip from a Malaysian newspaper. And the headlines, I didn't put it in there, basically said that this was irresponsible motorcyclists, how none of them are really using the motorcycle lane, despite the fact that there had been a dedicated motorcycle lane. I put next to this picture a table showing the distribution of motorized vehicle. Now, in Malaysia, you'll see here that about half of all motorized transport in the country is actually motorcycle or powered two-wheelers, basically. And in countries such as Indonesia, we know that that statistic is even higher. It's probably about 80. So the question that I have is that why do we look at this and our immediate reaction is to say those motorcyclists are being irresponsible because they're not utilizing the dedicated motorcycle lane. Why aren't we asking the question, why aren't we not referring to dedicated vehicle lanes? If the majority of motorized transport is motorcycles and the minority are passenger vehicles, why do we still talk about dedicated motorcycle lanes? Again, I'm not criticizing, but I'm showing these examples to highlight that actually there is an inherent bias in terms of how we talk about road safety, how we talk about the safety of motorcycles, and how we think about motorcyclists in general. Even though we say, yes, we're applying a safe system and we're not really blaming victims or we're not really blaming the users, we inherently look at this and say, well, there's a lane there, even though it doesn't make sense that there's one lane for a large part of the population, yet we're still saying it's them that's irresponsible. Next slide, please. So again, I didn't put this picture in first when I was showing the picture of family vehicles, because this is the one we often think about. But it's interesting to me when you look at this picture and you go to the next slide, how our reactions change. Because this comes from Europe. This comes from, people talk about, in recent times, we've had a lot of discussions about the fact that people are putting their children on motorcycles. And we're talking about how it's a necessity, but there's always a sort of a condemnation that comes with it, that people are doing this and it's unsafe. Yet we're not having the same reactions when we see this, right? This is a motorized two-wheeler. It is capable of going 30, 40 kilometers per hour. As you can see here, it's actually going in traffic with cars. So I'm not here to say that this is right or that's wrong. I'm simply here to say that part of what we need to do, part of what I'm trying to do is to get us to challenge our own beliefs and how we look at the problem of power two-wheelers. And to recognize that, in fact, we ourselves do have biases when it comes to how we approach the problem, how we describe the problem, and how we think about the solutions to address the problem. Next slide. I use this example a lot, but it's been a couple of years, so I'll use it again. A few years ago, long before COVID, when we were still traveling a lot, I had an incident where I was sitting at an airport and I had a flight, and it was canceled simply because birds flew into the engine, right? So flight was canceled. It was a whole ordeal. They had to get everybody home, and we didn't get our flight. And the thing that struck me most about that experience was that nobody complained. Yes, we were all inconvenienced. There was no uproar. There was no outrage that how on earth could you inconvenience us because of a few birds flying into an engine. And I concluded that the reason why there was no outrage is because when it comes to aviation and aviation safety, we all accept it and we all value it. Can you imagine what would happen if somebody said, I'm sorry, the buses are going to be canceled because the tire treads are too thin? Can you imagine what people would say? I don't think people would have just embraced it the same way we do, right? Next slide. And that's really why I talk a lot about the need for us to think about safety as a value. And if we start to think about safety as a value, the question that I ask all of you is then, how would we start to approach this problem of road safety? How would we start to approach the problem of safety of power two-wheelers and motorcycles in particular differently? And I'm quite glad that we have the youth representatives here today, because I think the youth are here today not only because they are most impacted by this issue, but I think the youth are here today because it's actually their opportunity, and dare I say, their responsibility in some ways to reimagine mobility and transport for the future. Next slide. And I believe that if we started from the perspective of saying safety is the primary value that we have when it comes to transport and mobility, we might think about it in a very different way. And it's not just about the safe system, about reimagining mobility and transport and our need for mobility and transport. Certainly over the last 2 years, the pandemic has really forced us all to relook and rethink how we live and how we work and how we move about. And I put here as an example of what was described as a 15-minute city. This comes from Paris. where the mayor was actually trying to promote this idea that we should actually be living within a 15-minute radius of all of our needs. We should be able to go to school in 15 minutes, go to grocery shops, go to our cultural events, leisure, children, all of that should happen within 15 minutes. And if you imagine a 15-minute city, it's obvious that you wouldn't be needing heaps and heaps of cars, that maybe what you might want are actually more powered 2 and 3 wheelers. And it's about creating the safe spaces for these powered 2 and 3 wheelers to exist and to move about. Next slide. So all that to say is that I think we have a tremendous opportunity to rethink this. But part of our challenge is actually thinking about how do we bring about these changes. And I think a fundamental question that needs to be answered is who is able to influence these types of changes? Obviously, we know that the global community, the United Nations, all of the UN agencies, ADB, all of these different organizations play a huge role. But we often forget to think about a big group of actors that have tremendous influence. I put here a list, this comes from the CIA report, the list of the world's 10 largest economic entities. It's economic entities, not countries and not corporations. And it's done explicitly just to show that Walmart is the 10th largest economic entity in the world. That means that, for example, the United Nations recognizes 194 member states. Walmart is larger as an economic entity than 184 of those member states. When we think about the influence of entities over mobility and transport systems, it's clear that we must engage in some form or fashion with the private sector and these economic entities that have tremendous influence over our many social aspects of our lives. Next slide. This shows, you can go to the next one. This one just shows the top 25, and you can see that, for example, that a number of these are actually private sector corporations. Next slide. So my point here is simply to say that, and when we think about these corporations, total corporate spending on procurement is about 43%. And if you look at the 500 largest companies, there's about $30 trillion in revenue. And if they spend 43 of that on procurement, that means that they're spending $13 trillion on procurement, which often involve transport. And I only put the statistics to remind us that we're often calling for more investment in road safety. We're often saying that road safety is underfunded. Yes, there is a need for us to invest more in doing the things that we know are effective. But we also have an opportunity to leverage the tremendous investments that are already happening. This does not include the investments in infrastructure. It's just to say that $13 trillion of corporate spending is on basically procurement. And if we're able to use that and influence that spending in a way that results in better outcomes for road safety, that could be tremendous. Next slide. So my final slide here is just a gentle reminder. I mean, I use this slide again a lot because it's an analogy, it's symbolism that resonates quite a lot with me. Obviously, this comes from 1972. Edward Lorenz, who was actually a mathematician and a meteorologist, and he first coined this idea that a small change that's caused by a butterfly flapping its wings could, through a series of effects, could actually result in a tornado or a storm somewhere else. And I think that if we're trying to bring about fundamental change in the way that we think about road safety, if we're trying to bring about fundamental change, a paradigm shift, this is also a starting point for us. That we don't have to change the world overnight, but we have to identify what are the strategic levers that we can push today that will ultimately, down the road, result in that desired outcomes that we're seeking to have. And again, my final point is that part of what we really need to do is to, as you've heard already from the previous speakers, change the way we talk about road safety, change the way we think about motorcyclist safety, and really, I think, have moved to a fundamental shift in how we approach this problem. And I'm not saying that that's easy. I'm not saying that we have the answers, but I hope that over the next 2 days, this group, through your deliberations, through your exchanges of ideas, we'll come up with a starting point that will allow us to do what this butterfly is doing today, which is to trigger changes that will result in lasting impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nan. Thank you, Nan, for that. And I think you mentioned there the fact of using a slide after a couple of years because we've all been locked away, and at the same time also challenging us to really question some of the perhaps beliefs or sureties that we might think we have, and let's open those up and explore it. And I think that's exactly what in the last few years where we haven't been able to come together in person, and even with those joining online, we haven't had the opportunity to do. So great that we can open that and have that discourse over the next couple of days. Just before we close this session, I wanted to add one acknowledgement in the delegation from the Senator of Pakistan, which is Senator Mohammed Asad Ali Khan Junaid. Welcome and thank you for coming, and you're warmly welcome to this event. Before I move into just the instructions for the rest of the morning, I do acknowledge our online participants who are with us today, and there will be many opportunities over the course of the 2 days for them to bring questions. But one I wanted to bring from them here came from Rommel Miles Coro Academy, who was referencing Mao's presentation, talking about what Rommel mentioned is the staggering number of young people who die in road crashes. And Rommel's question was around some of the data that informs causation or the issues in the system that result in these deaths. And I thought this might be actually a quick opportunity, Nan, if you wanted to mention just the progress on the next status report and you know what that entails, and also where it might uncover some of that causation across the system.
The data collection is actually in progress right now. We're working with all of our member states to collect data. So in every country, there's a designated national data focal point that's working with us to enter in the data. In terms of some of the new elements I'll talk about, in fact, for this report, we've actually made a few changes. Historically, we've only reported on fatalities, and this year we are trying to reflect to the extent possible the actual burden of injury, and as I think our colleague from ADB mentioned, the impact of injuries, including, for example, the impact on disability. We're also trying to collect a bit more data looking at some of the legislation, including, for example, policies that pertain to infrastructure, which is something that we haven't really done before. But all of that is currently being collected, and we will be having the data will be, the report will be published in October of 2023. So again, the report is in progress, and it will come out with a few new elements, which we're hoping that we'll be able to reflect this time around.
Fantastic, thanks, Nan. And so I do encourage all of you to keep an eye out for this. It's such an important document to really track not only the current situation in countries, but also really, I think, uncover as well the gaps in the system that are there more broadly in reducing death and serious injury on our roads, but of course for the focus of this event, specifically on powered 2 and 3-wheelers. So thanks so much, Rommel, for your question. And again, thanks to I think around 100 people or so who are joining us online. Okay, so as we bring this particular session to a close, I just wanted to outline some of the next steps for those online and in person. For those here in Manila, if you have an orange sticker currently on your lanyard, please go directly after we close here to the desk just outside the doors here, and you will then be taken out for the first of the Stop the Crash demos. Please, just if you have an orange sticker, we do have restrictions on the amount of people that can go there at any one time. So if you have a different sticker, don't worry, you will still have an opportunity to join, but just an orange sticker. If you do not have a sticker currently, please also go to that desk and you'll be given a particular color. But as I said, if you would like to go see that stop and touch demonstration and you have an orange sticker, please at 10:30 go to the desk and there'll be someone there waiting for you, and we'll ensure that we'll get you out there. Okay, so then the next thing that I should mention is for everyone else who is here in person, we'll have our coffee and refreshment break just outside where you came in the reception area. One thing you might notice on the agenda is that we deliberately mention the word networking, and we do encourage you to meet and greet and engage and speak with others. This, as I said right at the start, this is an opportunity for you to be greedy, not only about information, but also about connections and networks. So please do go out of your shell and go up to someone and introduce yourself and make those connections, because we know we need that collaborative action to really get impact in the work that we're doing. So that is for the people here, and we'll come back into the next room along at 11 o'clock, doors 3 and 4, for the next of our sessions. For those of us joining online, you'll be back with us at 1:30 Manila time this afternoon for the next of our presentation sessions. That's 1:30 Manila time, where we will look at the next series of presentations, which will be looking at adopting safer vehicle regulations relating to powered two-wheelers. So there will be, again, further opportunity for our online participants to ask questions and make comments in a longer Q&A session for that particular session starting at 1:30. So a final reminder, orange sticker, please go to the desk. Everyone else, enjoy your coffee and networking, and everyone back at 11 and online back at 1:30 Manila time. And please join me in thanking our panel here. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Take a photo.